once called worthless. The night she lost everything, the rain did not stop. It soaked through her thin sweater, clung to her skin, and blurred the city lights until the world looked as broken as she felt.
I stand before you unbroken. Your
Elara
darkness
stood
will not
at the
claim
edge
me.
of
I
the
defy you
sidewalk,
and your shadows.
clutching a small bag that held the last pieces
What
of her
are you
life,
doing?
documents,
He's
a
casting a
worn
spell.
scarf, and the
The power
quiet
is
dignity
mine.
she refused to drop, even when her heart was shattering. Only an hour earlier, she had been someone's wife. Now, she was nothing. Her husband had not shouted. That would have been easier to survive. Instead, he spoke calmly, coldly, as if explaining a business decision that had already been finalized. He told her she had failed him. Failed his family. Failed her purpose as a woman. A marriage without children, he said, was meaningless. A wife who could not give birth was replaceable. When Elara tried to speak, he turned away. The door closed behind her with a soft click, quiet, final, merciless. She walked for hours that night. Past glowing restaurants. Past couples laughing under umbrellas. Past windows filled with warmth that no longer belonged to her. Her shoes rubbed her feet raw, but she welcomed the pain. It reminded her she was still alive. By morning, hunger forced her to stop. She sat on a cold bench near the edge of the city, watching steam rise from sewer grates as the world rushed past her without noticing. No family. No home. No future. Her body, once blamed for everything, felt heavy with shame she did not deserve. She did not cry for long. Elara had learned that tears solve nothing. 3 days later, exhaustion hollowed her movements. She slept wherever she could, under awnings, near subway entrances, anywhere the wind was quieter. Each night, she whispered the same question to herself. Was I really worth nothing? On the 4th day, fate answered in an unexpected way. A small notice, pinned crookedly to a community board, caught her eye. It was written simply, without decoration. Caretaker needed. Remote estate. No family attachments preferred. Immediate start. Elara stared at the words longer than she should have. No family attachments. She almost laughed. That night, she followed the address into the mountains, riding the last bus until the road disappeared into mist. The air grew colder. The forest pressed close, silent and watching. When the bus driver dropped her off, he didn't ask questions. He simply drove away quickly, as if relieved to be leaving her behind. The estate gates appeared suddenly, massive iron, twisted into shapes that looked like thorns and wings. As Elara approached, the gates opened on their own with a deep metallic groan. Her heart pounded. The mansion beyond them was ancient, carved from stone darker than the night itself. Lights glowed behind tall windows. The place felt alive, breathing slowly, as if testing her courage. She lifted her hand to knock. The door opened before she touched it. He stood there, tall, silent, impossibly still. King Alaric did not smile. His eyes, an unnatural shade of violet, studied her as if he could see every scar she carried, inside and out. Power radiated from him, not loud or aggressive, but absolute, like gravity. You came, he said. It was not a question. Elara swallowed. I did. His gaze lingered on her torn coat, her tired eyes, the way she stood straight despite everything. He inhaled softly, as though reading something invisible in the air. You smell of sorrow, he said calmly. And endurance. She flinched, but she did not step back. I can work, Elara replied. I don't cause trouble. A flicker of something crossed his face. Curiosity, perhaps. You will face danger here, Alaric said. Fear. Things that would break most humans. Elara lifted her chin. I have already been broken, she said quietly. I survived. For a long moment, the vampire king simply watched her. Then he stepped aside. Enter, he said. Let us see if the world was wrong about you. As Elara crossed the threshold, the doors closed behind her, sealing her fate. She did not yet know that this house would become her battlefield. She did not yet know that the children inside would change her life forever. And she certainly did not know that the man watching her now, feared by empires, would one day kneel before her. But destiny had already begun to move. And it never asks permission. The house that tested her heart. The moment Elara stepped inside the mansion, the air changed. It wasn't colder, if anything, it was warm, but it carried weight. The kind that pressed against her chest, making every breath feel deliberate. Candlelight lined the stone hallways, flickering softly, casting shadows that moved a fraction too slowly to be normal. King Alaric walked ahead of her without looking back, his footsteps silent on the marble floor. You will not leave the grounds, he said calmly. You will not wander at night. And you will not scream. Elara frowned slightly. That last one might be difficult. For the first time, the corner of his mouth twitched. He led her to a large chamber at the far end of the hall. The doors were carved with symbols Elara didn't recognize, ancient, sharp, and powerful. From behind them came sounds that made her pause. A crash. A hiss. Something scraped across the floor with unnatural speed. Alaric stopped. This is where most caretakers fail. Before Elara could ask what he meant, the doors burst open. Books flew into the air, spinning violently. A chair slammed against the wall and splintered. A small figure darted past her with glowing eyes and sharp teeth bared in what might have been laughter. Elara froze. 5 children stared at her. They looked human, mostly. Pale skin. Strange eyes. Too still. Too aware. You brought another one, a tall boy said coldly. How long will this one last? She smells weak, another muttered. A younger girl bared her fangs and hissed. Elara's heart hammered, but she did not run. Instead, she noticed the details others had missed. The way the smallest child clutched a torn stuffed animal. The anger masking fear in the older boy's eyes. The restless energy of children who had never been taught how to be children. I'm Elara, she said softly. And you're not in trouble. The room went silent. No one had spoken to them like that before. You're lying, one of the twins said. Everyone lies. Elara took a slow step forward. Maybe. But not tonight. Behind her, King Alaric leaned against the doorway, watching closely. The children tested her relentlessly. They knocked over furniture. They mocked her. One even snapped his teeth inches from her hand. Elara did not shout. She set rules. She cleaned wounds. She listened. When one of them finally broke down crying, she sat on the floor and held them without fear, despite the fangs, despite the claws. By midnight, exhaustion replaced chaos. By dawn, all 5 children slept peacefully, for the first time in years. Alaric stood at the edge of the room, stunned. You should be afraid, he said quietly. Elara looked up at him, tired but steady. They are children, she replied. They just forgot how to feel safe. Something shifted in the vampire king's gaze. That night, Elara was given a room, not a servant's chamber, but a warm, quiet space near the children's quarters. Protection. Trust. The next morning, the court arrived. They stared openly at her, this human woman walking calmly beside the vampire king, unbowed, unafraid. She is temporary, one elder scoffed. She will fail. Elara heard them. She said nothing. Days turned into weeks. She taught the children patience instead of violence. Kindness instead of cruelty. Responsibility instead of fear. She punished gently, praised sincerely, and stayed when others would have fled. Alaric watched from the shadows. The way she never raised her voice. The way she stood between danger and the children. The way the mansion began to feel alive again. One evening, as moonlight poured through the windows, Alaric spoke to her privately. "Why do you stay?" he asked. "You know what we are." Elara met his gaze. "Because I know what it's like to be unwanted." The truth landed harder than any weapon. That night, Alaric stood guard outside her door, not as a king, but as a protector. And somewhere deep within his immortal heart, something long buried began to awaken. Not desire. Not hunger. But respect. When the world turned against her, Elara knew the peace would not last. The vampire court had been watching her from the beginning, measuring, judging, waiting for her to fail. Whispers followed her through the corridors like cold mist. A human. A barren woman. Unfit to stand among us. She heard the words, even when they were spoken softly. The children felt it too. They stayed closer to her now, instinctively sensing the threat. The oldest watched the elders with narrowed eyes. The youngest slept only when Elara was near. King Alaric said nothing. That frightened the court more than his rage ever could. The challenge came on a night of gathering, when the moon hung low and red above the mountains. The elders summoned Elara to the great hall, not as a guest, but as a subject on trial. She stood alone at the center of the chamber, hands clasped calmly in front of her. Stone pillars rose like judgment around her. Dozens of ancient eyes fixed on her. "You have overstepped," one elder declared. "You interfere with vampire bloodlines." Another sneered. "A woman who cannot bear children pretending to raise ours." Elara felt the sting, but she did not bow. "I do not pretend," she said quietly. "I care for them." Laughter rippled through the hall. King Alaric remained seated on his throne, unmoving, his expression unreadable. "You teach them weakness," an elder continued. "Affection makes monsters reckless." Before Elara could respond, the doors burst open. A scream echoed through the hall. One of the children had been attacked. Chaos erupted. Elara ran. She found the youngest cornered in a shadowed corridor, trembling as a rogue vampire loomed over him. Without thinking, Elara placed herself between them. "Get away," she said, her voice steady despite the terror pounding through her chest. The vampire laughed. She did not move. The sound that followed shook the castle. King Alaric arrived like a storm, power radiating from him, eyes blazing with fury. The rogue was gone in an instant, reduced to ash by a single gesture. Silence fell. Alaric turned, not to the elders, but to Elara. "You are hurt," he said softly. "I'm fine," she replied, though her hands trembled. The children rushed to her side, clinging to her clothes, their fear melting into relief. For the first time, the court truly saw it. She was not weak. She was unbreakable. Alaric rose and faced the elders. "She stays," he said. His voice carried the weight of centuries. "She teaches what you have forgotten." An elder protested. "You endanger the empire." Alaric's gaze turned cold. "Then the empire will change." The declaration sent shockwaves through the hall. That night, whispers became threats. Warnings were sent. The elders spoke of punishment, of exile, of removal. Elara found Alaric standing alone on the balcony, staring into the endless dark. "They will not stop," she said. "I know," he replied. She hesitated. "If my presence endangers them, I will leave." Alaric turned sharply. "You will not." His intensity startled her. "You have given them something I never could," he continued. "A reason to hope." The wind carried the scent of pine and snow as silence settled between them. Then, quietly, Elara said, "I was told I was worthless. Alaric looked at her fully now. In my world, he said, worth is proven by choice, not birth. He removed his cloak and placed it around her shoulders, a public symbol of protection. From that moment on, Elara was no longer just a caretaker. She was under the king's guard. And the empire took notice. But so did their enemies. Because kindness, in a world built on fear, is the most dangerous rebellion of all. When the past came for her crown, Elara felt it before anyone told her. The air around the castle shifted, uneasy, restless, like a storm forming where the sky still looked calm. The children clung to her more tightly than usual that morning, their instincts sharper than words. Something was coming. King Alaric summoned the court at dusk. This time, the threat was not whispered behind stone walls. It arrived openly. A delegation from the human world stood at the outer gates, powerful men in dark suits, flanked by armed guards and government seals. Their presence alone was an insult. Humans were never invited this deep into vampire territory. At their center stood a man Elara recognized instantly. Her heart skipped, not in longing, but in disbelief. Her former husband. He looked older. Smaller. The confidence he once wore so easily now sat awkwardly on his shoulders. His gaze swept the courtyard until it landed on her, and froze. Elara, he breathed. Murmurs spread like wildfire. She stepped forward slowly, her posture calm, her face unreadable. She did not rush. She did not hide. I came to take my wife home, the man announced loudly. She's been manipulated. This creature has brainwashed her. Gasps echoed. Alaric did not move, but the ground beneath him trembled. Elara spoke first. I am no longer your wife, she said evenly. And I am not lost. The man laughed nervously. You were homeless. Broken. You need help. The words once would have shattered her. Now, they slid off like dust. You threw me away, Elara continued. Because I couldn't give you a child. The court went silent. You said I had no value. She gestured toward the children, who stood proudly behind her. This is my family. Her former husband sneered. Those things aren't children. That was his mistake. The temperature dropped instantly. Shadows stretched unnaturally long. The children's eyes glowed, not with hunger, but with fury. Alaric finally stepped forward. Leave, the vampire king commanded. The man straightened, clinging to false authority. I represent powerful interests. If you don't release her, there will be consequences. Alaric smiled slowly. Then allow me to return what you gave her. With a single gesture, documents appeared in the air, contracts, debts, records. Everything the man owned. Everything he had built. And everything he had lost. Your empire collapsed the moment you decided she was disposable, Alaric said calmly. You just didn't feel it yet. The man fell to his knees. Elara watched without satisfaction, only clarity. I don't want revenge, she said quietly. I want freedom. She turned away. The gates closed behind the human delegation, sealing the past where it belonged. But the danger did not leave with them. That night, the vampire elders struck. They attempted to remove the children, declaring them unstable, corrupted by human influence. Armed shadows stormed the inner halls. Alarms rang. The castle shook. Elara did not run. She stood before the children, arms outstretched. You will not take them, she said. An elder sneered. You cannot stop us. She looked at them, fearless. Then you will have to destroy me. The hall erupted into chaos. Alaric unleashed his power, but the elders were many, ancient, relentless. The battle raged through corridors of stone and fire. When one elder lunged for the smallest child, Elara moved without thinking. She took the blow meant for him. The impact threw her across the hall. Everything stopped. Alaric roared, not in rage, but in terror. He reached her in an instant, cradling her broken body. The world narrowed to the sound of her shallow breaths. "You chose them," he whispered, voice shaking. "Over yourself." Elara smiled weakly. "That's what mothers do." Something ancient answered that truth. The air burned with violet light as Alaric stood, holding her against his chest. "This ends now," he declared. The elders fled, or fell. Silence returned. Elara healed slowly under his touch, warmth spreading where pain had been. She opened her eyes to find him still there, still holding her as if letting go would break him. "You risked everything," he said. "So did you," she replied softly. That night, before the entire court, King Alaric made his choice. "She is no longer under my protection," he announced. Gasps followed. "She stands beside me." He knelt. And the empire held its breath. Mother of the empire. The hall was silent. Not the tense silence of fear, but the reverent stillness that comes when history is about to change. King Alaric remained on one knee before Elara, his head bowed, not in submission, but in truth. The elders who remained stood frozen, unable to deny what they had all witnessed. Power had not chosen her. Love had. Elara's heart pounded as she looked down at him. Once, she had begged to be enough. Once, she had believed herself small. Now, the most feared ruler in the hidden world knelt before her not because she was flawless, but because she was fearless. "I do not kneel for weakness," Alaric said, his voice steady and clear. "I kneel for devotion. For courage. For the woman who chose 5 lost souls when the world offered her nothing." He rose and turned to the court. "By ancient law," he declared, "a ruler may choose a partner not by blood, but by bond." A ripple moved through the chamber. Elara felt the children press against her legs. She looked down at them, their glowing eyes filled not with hunger, but hope. They did not see her as broken. They never had. They saw her as home. The coronation took place beneath the open sky, where moonlight painted the stone silver. No crowns of gold were used, only obsidian and living flame. The old laws demanded truth, not decoration. Elara stepped forward, dressed simply, her presence commanding without effort. Alaric placed the crown upon her head. "With this bond," he said, "you are no longer guest, guardian, or shield." She met his gaze. "You are queen." The children knelt first. Not because they were told to, but because they wanted to. In that moment, the empire understood. She had not conquered them. She had claimed them. The changes that followed were swift and lasting. The laws softened. Orphans were protected. Power became responsibility, not entitlement. The vampire empire did not weaken under compassion, it evolved. And the human world? It never saw her again. Her former husband faded into obscurity, a man who once held everything and lost it all, not through punishment, but through his own cruelty. History remembered him only as a footnote to a woman's rise. On the highest balcony of the castle, Elara stood one evening, watching the children laugh as they chased moonlight through the gardens. Alaric joined her, his presence calm, constant. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "They told me I was barren," she said. "But they were wrong." She turned as the children ran toward her, calling her name. "I was never empty," Elara continued. "I was waiting to be chosen." Alaric took her hand, not as king to queen, but as partner to partner. Below them, an empire thrived. And the world learned a lesson it never wanted to hear. A woman's worth is not measured by what she gives birth to, but by what she is brave enough to protect.